My name is Heiko Hoffmann. I am an A&R director at a distribution company called The Orchard. But the reason why I'm sitting here and also know these people here is that for many years I've been running a music magazine called Groove magazine in Germany. That's, by the way, still around. I have two questions to the audience before we start. The first question is there anyone here who does not understand German? So that's easy, then we'll continue in English.
Right, because we thought it's in German.
Is that okay for everyone? Yeah.
For me it's fine.
And then the other question was, who of you is familiar or has heard of the record label Mobilee, or is familiar with any of these people sitting here? Okay, so most, but not everyone. So I hope for those of you who are familiar with Mobilee, you're still going to learn something new. And for those who don't, I hope there's something worthwhile that you get out of this today. So we're going to talk here for about 30 minutes, after which I'm going to open it up to the audience if you have any questions. And over those next 30 minutes, we're going to talk about the 2-decade history of Mobilee Records, how it all started, what happens to a record label started by friends if those friendships evolve, and also the challenges of running a record label 20 years ago and today. So I'm looking forward to this, and I start with, I actually, like when I was asked to moderate this panel, there was one image that I didn't know, like a memory that I had that I didn't know I had, and that was actually with you, Anja, and right when the label started, we were meeting in the restaurant right where underneath your office. Oh. And you either told me about the plans for the label, or we met and you gave me like a first test pressing or white label of the first release. And I don't remember more, but just this image came back. Is there
feedback?
Yeah. So I'm wondering, like, how did the idea to start Mobilee come about, and what was the reason behind the name?
Yeah, maybe. First of all, thank you for all the listeners here and that you show interest in our content. The idea was actually because I was starting DJing already 25 years ago in the beginning of 2000, and I had a good relationship with a club called Watergate. Unfortunately, it had to close this year. And it was not the Watergate that we know already, because they started and they had also some problems. They didn't know how to run a club. Berlin was not so popular it was used to be. And so they came to me and asked me, because I had a radio job, if I want to do a party. And because of my audience, and radio was also quite different than now. It was all before the new thing called internet what happened. So there was a lot of listeners, especially on a Saturday night electronic music show what I run. And so I decided with Ralf, I asked Ralf, hey, should we do a party at Watergate? And we both agreed. And we came up with the name Popmobiel. And I was never a fan of genres, but then I realized quite soon that in an underground music genre, the name pop is not so good. So and then we changed it into Mobilee, and because it looks so like mobile, it was not looking really good. So we changed it in 2 E's, and Mobilee was a little bit French, it was a little bit chic. So we liked it.
I think it's also a nice name because, right, as a record label, you have to be mobile and you're moving people, so it's in movement, but also Mobilee is kind of in balance. There's different factors that need to balance each other out, so I think it's a good...
That's what we figured out later. So like the interpretation of all this, the balance, always moving and so on. But we also learned that this word, Mobilee, is very easy to pronounce for everybody all around the world.
So Anja, you mentioned like that you did this party, but then why, like, because even back then, right, there were a lot of record labels around. Why another record label?
Yes, it had to do something with my radio show, what I was running, because I had a Saturday night show, 3 hours, at a really popular radio station called Fritz. And during this time, I played a lot of demos. Of course, I got a lot of promos, but this is also how I met, for example, Thomas, because I just had a CD of them in my hand, and I played them, and I told the listeners what kind of music it is and told them about the artist. And then it was actually the distributor, Word and Sound, who figured out, was so smart and said, hey, you're playing all this music from this young artist. You have a reach because you have a radio show. Hey, I think you have to do a label. And this was actually quite smart. And I said, yeah, why not? And so I figured out I can't do it alone. I need someone who takes the structure and the brain. So I asked Ralf, and we started it together.
But we both had like our own careers already going on, no? So in different segments, like radio, but also marketing background, running Love Radio, event productions, and same with me. And it started as a side project. It was more like a fun project, hobby kind of thing. I think we were both kind of like more ravers by heart than kind of like music producer nerds or something, because most of the labels who started or established during that time, 2005, they were either, let's say, Minus or Dirty Bird or a few others who started, I think, more or less at the same time. They were all producer nerds, and they had a very clear idea and vision of sound. And I think we had a different approach. It was more like, I don't know, it was more about clubbing, dancing, and like everything that we experienced over 20 years when we were ravers.
Yeah. Thomas, do you remember how you first met Anja and Ralf?
Yes, actually I do. It was a funny moment because Tassilo and me, my partner Tassilo, we make parties in Berlin, and there was one moment that we had a party like at Pavillon Friedrichshain. And we were booking Anja because she had already she was already there because they had like this Love Radio.
I think yes, I was related to the Friedrichshain already since years.
So we invited Anja, and Anja was playing. Actually, was not packed this party, but was fun. Of course, we met Anja and Ralf, and and then Ralf and Anja told us they're starting a new label.
Okay.
Yes, nice. We really like the sound, and we can imagine to release it. And that was the first encounter of Ralf and Anja, and we had some time to talk with Ralf because Anja was playing meanwhile also, and we get.
What was the name again?
The name
of your first release on Mobilee?
Poppy Encased.
Schuss aus der Hüfte.
Schuss aus der Hüfte. Poppy Encased was the second one, ne? Schuss aus der Hüfte. Oh my God, I'm sorry.
Streber, Ralf.
Oh ja.
Das ist auswendig gelernt.
Vorher, ja. Schuss aus der Hüfte, ja. How can you translate it in English? Shoot from the hip. Shoot from the hip. Shoot from the what is it? Yeah, it's the hip. Yeah, shoot from the hip.
Yeah, there were exciting times because we started. We just pressed vinyl and sold vinyl. That was our main business.
Yeah, and the interesting part is that the second release is not planned. So I think this is really, because Thomas said it. It was Thomas said it in the history how we met. Yeah, we have a first release, but a second we have no idea. And this was a really big advantage. And this is how actually we were running a label back then. Wow. Nowadays it's probably impossible.
And before we go on, continuing talking about the label, I wanted to paint like a little picture of what the Berlin scene was like in 2005 or in the years before, because even though 20 years is a long time, I actually had the feeling in 2005 already that like techno and house had been around almost forever or like a long time. It was nothing new. And actually in Germany, it had also already peaked, because at the end of the 90s you had like Love Parade with 1 million visitors, you had techno tracks dominating the charts, and in the early 2000s it really went more back underground. It was you didn't have those big mainstream public displays of the music, and something that's also crucial and that was new back then was a lot of the clubs that are still around, but also some that are not around any longer, started out at this time. So Berghain, and for the music that you were playing, also Panorama Bar was significant, of course, but then Bar 25 was really important for the music shaping up. Like you mentioned Watergate, but also Club der Visionäre, I guess. It's all like something was happening. And could you maybe like describe from your perspective of like what was happening in the early 2000s, sound-wise, clubbing-wise, and also, I mean, something that was still relatively new back then is that Berlin became this center of international attention, and that you had people both clubbing-wise travel to Berlin, but also that you had producers like, I don't know, Ricardo Villalobos, Luciano, Magda and Richie Horton. Like all these people were living in Berlin, and there was really a pretty strong focus on the city, right? Yeah.
So I moved to Berlin in 2003 from Cologne, where I got my early education in electronic music, and in Frankfurt before. And what you just described is exactly how I felt it as well. Like end of the 90s, beginning of 2000, or end of the 90s, for me, techno was kind of dead. I didn't feel like so connected to this anymore. And what happened then in Berlin, beginning of 2000, was like kind of a reset of this culture and community, how I experienced it in the very beginning of discovering techno music in this community. And this is what happened, and this was also motivated me to to dive into this again. And it was great to meet Anja, who also like shared this passion. And I think we were also lucky that we started this label first of all in a time where everything was kind of like put upside down when it comes to music industry. You know, like 2 years later. So we started the label, we sold vinyl. 2-3 years later, MP3 came up, DJs started to play with CDs, and Beatport started their business, and so on. So we were constantly had to evolve and to adapt to new situations. But yeah, so that were the times, and I think we were lucky to start at that moment when things were like restarting, and a lot of movement in Berlin especially.
How was it for you, Thomas?
Yeah, I have also the feeling that the 90s were fading, you know, like, so they was still there, but, you know, there was not present anymore, and there was a gap for something new, and also sound-wise. And this, I think it was a perfect moment when you guys started with the label, with this new artist, with this new idea, and it was refreshing. Of course, it was new, and yeah, I had also the feeling there's a new start right now, and it's also time for a new start in Berlin, you know, which I really like. Also, what I also had in mind, like the clubs was like still a little bit the same like the 90s. For example, I remember when I was in Tresor, I liked always this Mysterium, you know, you have no seen pictures before, you just go in there. There's like this dark, it's like, you know, like it's like Mysterium, you know, and it was still there, but like this old sound were fading, you know, and there was time for something new.
Yeah, it was anyway the time of globalization, digitalization. There was a completely different feeling all over the world. I mean, internet came up. You know, there were so many things developing during this time, and it was actually quite good for a city like Berlin. They never shaped out, so we still were growing. We still were not over it, and there was still space in many kind of ways to grow. And this was the time we all had advantage from. You know, also the music scene.
And we got international recognition without having a marketing budget.
Wow, yeah.
It's impossible these days, you know, with 100,000 releases coming out, I think, every day at the moment. So how do you get attention to new artists, to new music? And Berlin was on the radar at that time, and that helped us to boost the brand and the music and our artists. It was an artist collective as well in the beginning.
And I would say, like, overall, the dominating sound of that time in Berlin especially was something called minimal techno, which was just evolving. How, like, when you started the label, was that on the back of your mind, or how did you position yourself, like, sound-wise when you wanted to start the label?
I think we were never so focused on a special sound, like Ralf said in the beginning. We released sound, what we find really authentic, which had something what touched us, and this is how we build our artists. And you can, I mean, I find it really, sometimes I have to laugh, and everyone said, Mobilee was this minimal label. Unfortunately, we were not. Of course, we had great minimal tracks on there, but we had so many different artists. We have Panpot, they were absolutely doing this minimal in a really groovy, techie way. But on the other hand, we had Zebo K, and he was absolutely a house producer, so you couldn't put him into the thing of minimal, you know. So this was, and then there was a combo called Exercise One, which you would maybe call today more indie. You know, this was not really straightforward minimal. What, for example, Richie Houghton did with his label.
And maybe the reason is, like you said, Ralf, that this was a label which was not started by a producer or by one DJ putting their sound on something, but there were these different perspectives. And
it was started by a woman and a man together.
Which, was actually, I mean, it's interesting that you're saying this, but back then this was very unusual.
In Berlin not. We had Ellen, we had Monika Kruse, just to be fair. We were really straightforward, and disc girls also did parties before the word diverse was actually quite modern and promoted. So I have to say we were always there.
True. What are some of the, if you just think of the early years of Mobilee, what are some of the images or memories immediately coming to your mind? Like what kind of scenes or images?
Maybe I'm going to start because I was also listening a little bit the Q&A of Panpot, and Thomas mentioned also during this interview some things. For example, when we met these guys, Thomas was afraid of flying and he was not flying, and he just talked about the story. And we have also our friends from Barcelona here, our first Barcelona parties and Barcelona experience. This is always what comes up in my mind when it comes to the early stories or funny stories of Mobilee, because we were not like this big artist with a lot of money. Also the label, we were not spoiled. We were DIY, let's call it like this. So we always had one apartment all together. And Thomas already traveled on Tuesday because he was not flying. The other one was coming Saturday, and you can imagine how this was, you know. We were still young. We had a little bit of success. We loved it. We love what we're doing. We had actually the best time of our lives. And can you imagine, and then stay with all your friends 1 week in Barcelona? And so amazing. This is all the pictures what comes up. And of course we throw great parties because of this vibe which came out from us.
That's really true, yeah. It's like, as Anja said, this was actually like a really special moment. We all together in one apartment, we all like, there was this energy and the vibe what we had there. I never had it for the rest of my DJ career in my life anymore. This was so good because you really was behind what you're doing, you know. You like, I'm here for this and nothing else, not to be like for the restaurants. No, we're here for the party, we're here for us. We do what we want and we want to be good in it, and like, let's do it together. Yeah. And it was also, as Anja said, I was really afraid of flying in the beginning. So I was also like really sad because I thought maybe I missed the event because I can't fly there. So, but then I took the train on Tuesday and I arrived on Thursday. So it's like, it was dedication, I would say.
Yeah, Sonar Festival Barcelona played a very important role, I think, in our development. Once in a year. We did some special events on a rooftop that established to become something special and popular at a time when, I don't know, nobody did rooftop events at that time, or beach parties. It was like very rare, you know. So that was something very special. And one thing, I think like 3, 4, 5 years after we started, we already produced or tried to produce high quality video content. You know, we were lucky enough to have some people in our network and circle of friends who had professional camera equipment. And if I look back, I think that also helped a lot to get recognition, and we were like uploading these videos on YouTube and so on. So you couldn't really like record high quality videos with your phone at that time, you know. So yeah.
Nice. Anja, you mentioned it just now, and also when we were speaking yesterday, you were saying that something that struck you about Mobilee and your time together is the strength or the power that something has when you have the feeling that you're part of a gang, or like whatever you name it, a collective or a group of friends. And I guess that's also something when you started the label, like before, you were mostly, what you were doing was you were doing things on your own, your radio show, your DJing, and probably for all of you. So was that really something special that you did something together?
this was absolutely special, and I have to say also this was something what I later underestimated. You know, I mean Thomas and me, we left Mobilee for. We'll talk about this later, but I think we also make probably both the same experience, that this collective or friendship or the first experience that you have success together, that you can celebrate this together. What I tried to explain before. This helps a lot, and this was not easy to find. And for me, this is quite a part of success, to be in a collective, to have friends around, to do something and support each other, and to be a team. And that people know, okay, this artist belongs to this crew. And this was really helping and was something special. And I didn't know that it was so important until I left it.
How did it feel for you back then?
Yeah, exactly the same. Anja said it really well, actually.
Yeah.
I had the feeling also like the first steps what we walked in this industry was with Anja and Ralf together on a level that you have success, you know. And like the good thing is also like the different genres we are representing, like Anja, Zevo, Assis Panport, Exodus One, Rodriguez Jr., who else? And we had like this kind of diversity from sound, and we supporting all each other, and everyone was different. And like, yeah, the rooftop parties was like a good, like, I don't know what should I say. How Ralf said already, we had like this good video content from back in the days, which is really for today. But it's nice to see back in the days how it really was. So in the end, I really have to say it was the most important time in my DJ career to be with Mobilee, like taking the first steps, getting the right direction, and felt this energy, because it's still vibing today.
I mean, of course, these were different times, but I think that's also maybe a good advice or just an example for people who are just starting out in their career as a DJ or as a producer. And I would say, especially today, where via social media and TikTok, everything seems to be so much focused on the individual and on your own personality, that there is also a certain strength that you have your support network around you, and that you do things together. And it can be small steps, and also the reason why you want to do it doesn't need to be successful. It can also just be do it because you like to do something with your friends. And I think, I mean,
this is the times which is really which I'm missing, but I think it's also impossible to get it back, because, like you said, with all these individuals and social media, you're always, as an artist nowadays, you're hustling. You have to do release, you have to do a wonderful social media game, you have to have marketing, and you have so much time is going on to only focus on yourself. It's impossible that you can really be in a group like we were.
But it was also important for some of these artists to move on and do something new, and to change the configuration and work with new people to evolve and to get where they are right now. If you look at Panport and others, even if I would have loved to work together in this collective for 20 years, you know, it's like it's a necessary step at one point for an artist, and especially with Mobilee, where like 3, 4, 5, like let's say, defining artists do different sounds and different music, you know, and everybody is always kind of connected to all this music. It was very difficult for some of the artists to kind of like carve out their own sound signature.
I would like to understand a little bit more about this, because you're all sitting here on stage today together, but you're not working any longer together. And I guess that it means that you still somehow like each other and have a good relationship with each other, but I'm not sure if that was always the case. So, for example, you left, I think, Mobilee in 2015.
Actually, I'm not sure which year it was. It was for me like a big step to leave, because, as I said, it was like for me the most important steps in the beginning of my career in the music industry with Mobilee together, and I was really like afraid, how does it go without them? What should I do without Anja and Ralf? I thought, a little bit honestly. But I had also the feeling it is time to move on, you know. But we never I never broke the bridge to them, you know. I still had the contact to Anja and Ralf. I mean, like not that many. It's also fading sometimes a little bit, you know. But in the end, yeah, it was a good step to move forward, to do something else, you know, because also like, it's important to grow with your sound and like to do your own thing, maybe your own imprint, you know, changing like the agencies. it's like the industry is strict like this, that you have to be like also get your next steps, you know. And yeah, I think it was sad, but necessary.
Okay. But I must admit, there's always some kind of disappointment or like a moment of bitterness.
Or just feeling
hurt.
hurt.
A little bit.
Yeah.
You know?
100%.
So to be very honest. But I think we overcame this like feelings very, very quickly. And at the end, I'm just proud of that we helped Panpot in their beginning of the career.
Yeah.
You know? And I was thinking about the past 20 years in the last days, of course, and beside some artists that developed their career on Mobilee, we also had some people who worked for us who made a great career. No? People like who worked behind the scene, you know, like Anastasia, who is running like one of the most successful booking agencies right now, or we had like an intern called Tobias, who is now one of the most famous pop trance acts called You Not Us, for example. No? Or we had one. Or do you remember Darwin, who was one of the like the
poker player? But actually, if you want to hear funny stories about Mobilee, we had one intern. He was a poker player, professional ones, and I was always wondering why this
like
intern
roller,
coming with this huge car. You know, he was driving a Mercedes, and one time he also came with with a lot of money because he had a game later. Then you got invited to hotel rooms where they're playing. I'm not into this poker business, but I was always wondering why. And then he invited us to his flat, and I was like, wow, you know. And then I found out much later that he was a professional poker player, and he was an intern.
Why he was an intern actually?
He wanted to be in music.
So he wanted to be an intern.
Yeah, and maybe I don't know. Maybe he needs something. I had no idea.
Oh, yeah, maybe, yeah. Wow. We also won like in Las Vegas. No, in Detroit in a casino. You remember after the party?
I was
Me and Anja.
winning.
After
the first
the party,
time of my life. Oh, no.
Yeah, we came from the party like a little bit destroyed into the hotel. There was a casino downstairs, and me and Anja put like I think $9 in the machine, and we won like I don't know $150.
But the money didn't stay. No? It was already spent in the night.
Yeah, we spent it immediately.
But I think that was the main benefit for all of us. We traveled around the world.
That was that's true.
So we met so many people from different cultures and nations. I think that for me is the biggest gift that I got through Mobilee and from Mobilee.
That's true, yeah.
Anja, you left more or less like 2 years after Panpot were leaving in 2017. Like, what was the reason for this, or like, how did this come into being?
Yeah, for me it was of course a little bit different than for Panpot because I was a founder, but I felt during this time a lot of frustration on my work, artistical wise, and then it was for me too much pressure. I had the feeling, okay, we have to run the whole concept. We had a lot of people working for us. We have to write hits. We have to be in the charts, and this was for me as an artist was limiting me. And then I find out that Ralf and me were developing completely in different ways. And I didn't want to risk this, and because for me it was more important to have the friendship instead of staying, and then it would be like a war in the end, you know. And I had to accept that he was going different ways, also musical-wise, than I wanted to go, and this was then the reason. And I wanted to start over. I also, of course, like I said in the beginning, it was also like maybe, okay, I want to have this again, you know, because this beginning times were over where we spoke about it, and it was great. And I thought, oh, maybe I can build this again. But of course, the time were changing, and we all moved on, you know. So this was not so easy anymore.
Ralf, can you explain, or maybe also Anna, what these different ways are, or where you were wanting to go into different directions?
The main conflict was that we had like different perspectives, because I was kind of like, I had the management role, let's say, business management role, and Anja, of course, had to take care of her artistic expression mainly. So, and I think then Mobilee also, we gained like a decent size, let's say, you know, and also pressure in terms of like financial pressure. Yeah, it needs to run, you know. So, and I wanted to reach out, you know, and I wanted to put everything on a wider platform, also musically, like connecting new artists, different artists, and so on. And so yeah, and at the end, I can totally understand where Anja is coming from. You know, so what I mentioned before, that if you have like so many different artists, but Anja is, let's say, the anchor woman of the lady. She's always of the label. She's she's always connected to all the other artists and music, and it was probably difficult for her to just define herself artistically. I'm very thankful that we made it through and that we managed, or that you then handed it over to me and trusted me to move on.
And I mean, this has been now 8 years ago, so the label still exists. You are all still very active, be it as DJs, but also running your own record labels. But in regards to Mobilee, you touched a little bit about this in the beginning, but how did Mobilee change as a business? Like through what were you making money 20 years ago, and how is the label making money today? How has that changed?
Well, we didn't think too much about making money in the beginning, so it just happened. It grew organically. We were very lucky, like the release catalog number 3, Anja Schneider and the Bouquet, Rancho Relaxo, helped us to get international recognition, and I think we sold 6, 7, or 8,000 vinyl copies. Yeah. And from that moment on, we continued like pressing vinyl and selling all of that all the time. And this enabled us to improve our structure. You know? So we started our own booking agency, our own showcases, and so on. Everything was kind of like financed, co-financed by the label, and then later booking. But I more or less reinvested everything in the label, in fun, in our artists, and so on. So it was stable for a while, but it also became challenging then later when electronic music became bigger, became a really big business. 10 years later, and there was so much competition, and our little collective 360 model just didn't work out anymore, because like these booking agencies, they became bigger and bigger and bigger, and our little boutique approach just didn't really work out. We didn't have the power anymore to push our artists into the lineups and so on. So that was one thing. So when Anja left, that was also the chance to downsize everything again and bring it back to the essentials, which is that the label, releasing music. And I personally had the opportunity then to start my own artist management company, something that I somehow did over years for everybody with the label brand, but of course it was like an all-inclusive deal, let's say. And and now I must say it's challenging. It's very difficult to run a music label, even with a big back catalog that like we have. We were talking about the collective. We had like 3, 4, 5 headliners, let's say, on the label. Really like established artists, and it's very difficult for an independent label like us to collaborate or work with like high-profile artists. So in the past years, I had to work with new talents. I had to discover new talents. I had to work with completely unknown names, and that's very difficult these days, because the label platform, the brand, was very powerful 10 years ago. But if I pitch a song to a DSP, to Spotify, Apple Music, or whatever, they don't care about the label. It's just the artist. How many followers do you have?
And you're mentioning, for example, Spotify, because of course these days you're not making money through your vinyl sales. You're making money through streams.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
But also opening this up to Anja and Thomas, because you're also both running labels. Like, what do you think? How has the role of a record label changed over the years, and what meaning does it have today?
Yeah, it's true. Okay. These days, I have the feeling the record label is more than a record label. It's like a party brand, It's like merchandise. It's like kind of platform. You're basically pushing artists. It's a lot of things together, and also like, for example, how you're releasing these days. For example, what we do is like we're releasing like only one track every like 4 or 5 weeks, because you like look it up that it comes in playlists on Spotify, or like yeah, I mean like 4 tracks when you release them, like if you like would release it on vinyl, always 2 of them, they're not really like seen or like no one hears these days. So it's better to release 1 every like 4 or 5 weeks, I would say. And yeah, I think playlists are more important also these days than ever. So it's like, yeah, it's changed how you deliver and where you deliver your music, you know. And art, I think the artworks are not so important anymore. Like the canvas is more important on Spotify instead of like a good vinyl artwork, you know. This kind of stuff, snippets, YouTube shorts, like this kind of stuff, reels. It's changed. The dynamic is changing from releasing music. But yeah, there's still good music, I would say.
Yeah, I also heard this in your interview before, and I mentioned it also before. I thought I can start over again and build another Mobilee and start with the same energy, but I completely forgot that the time and the music were changing. And nowadays on my label, it makes no sense. I have not the chance and the opportunity like I had back in the days with Panpad, for example. They were not known. When I take a not known artist on my label, I'm just losing money. The only chance is I have to release by myself. And even if I like the music so much on this unknown artist, it makes no sense. Unfortunately, it's really hard to say, but it's just about the artist and the numbers. Otherwise, it makes no sense. I mean, I can't even push them anymore in this relation. I'm not at the moment.
Just to explain this to people who were maybe not around at the time when labels were still so relevant. I mean, back then, really, if you had a release on a label, just the fact that you were releasing on the label, that could sell a record and that could make it visible. One, because a lot of DJs were like following certain labels, and also if you went to an old school vinyl record shop, the records were sorted by label and you were actively looking for labels. Even then, I mean, more or less like platforms like Beatport were mimicking the traditional record shops in that sense, that you were looking on label pages and just following labels and discovering music like these. But I mean, these days, if you're listening to music, for example, on Spotify, there is not even a label page. You can't filter or search by labels, so
it's also not in their interest to have the labels.
It probably
feature.
works if you're saying if the label is a brand, is doing many
much
things
more than
beyond.
music. Yeah. The placement in the playlist, I think, is more important than the release on some labels. You know. So I remember back in the days, I was a big fan of Poker Flat. You know, like, I love Poker Flat. When you release on Poker Flat, you really were big in the game. You know. But these days, as I said, you know, if you be like getting a placement like in a Techno Bunker playlist as Panpot, it's like more important. Really, it's like, but it's also kind of cool, you know, because like it's something else, you know.
The difference is it's something you can't control, right?
This is also true, yeah. You can't. I mean,
Yeah,
there's help. There's tools and like people that help you to push you in playlists. You know, you have to pay like back in the days, you push your own carrier with something else. You know, with posters, placards, advertising somewhere else. But yeah, it is still there, but in a different way.
When I started to collect records, so I just wanted to have all catalog numbers of my favorite label. I even didn't care about the music. I just wanted to have it complete. You know, so.
Yeah, makes sense.
I got a sign that we have to finish this, unfortunately. But the last thing that I wanted to ask from you is, and I know it's maybe difficult or even impossible, but can you each name one record of Mobilee that you really, really love? And one rule, it can't be your own.
It can't be my own. Then I would say 100% Rancho Relaxo, because it was my favorite all-over track from Mobilee. Rancho Relaxo, and yeah.
Was this the second?
The third. It was like, yeah, it was like one of the best tracks. I'm sorry that I say it, because probably you guys want to say it, but Rancho Relaxo is like...
No, I can't.
Yeah, you can't, it's true, you can't. But Ralf.
Yeah, for me it's Zebuke Scenario in the Rodriguez Jr. remix, which they still play it these days.
And for me, it's Panpot Charlie.
Oh my God! Thank you.
Because I met
You betcha.
Who betcha? I met him at the Super Booth, and we both had a laugh, and he was singing it for me.
Okay, so I hope you all took notes and are going to listen to those tracks now, or re-listen to those tracks now. Thank you so much. But one question: do we still have time for a couple of audience questions or not? Can someone? 2 minutes. Okay, so let's make it brief. Who's got a question? If possible, a question that can be answered shortly. Anyone? Let me know if you see anyone who's raising their hands. If not,
no worries.
I'll give you back 2 minutes of your time, and thank you so much.
Thank you
for being
here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Really cool.